In the Old Testament book of Exodus, Moses writes, or the writer writes, that the Israelites should not suffer a witch to live. Not much more is said about it. And witchcraft, or accusations of, were rife in the Middle Ages in Europe. Thousands of people were burned in Europe after accusations of witchcraft. And the burning was because, first off, they thought that a witch was made of wood and therefore a witch would burn, and also because they wanted to ensure that the person went to hell. But the burning was also a cleansing of some sort. So a way of very brutal way of dying, but also with a purpose as well. By some estimates, as many as 50,000 people in Europe alone were executed for witchcraft in the Middle Ages. Of course, the exact number is not known. And witchcraft was not confined to Europe by any stretch of the imagination. Pretty much every continent in the world believed in some variation of what is very often called witchcraft.
Salem was not the first place in the American colonies where people had been put to death for witchcraft. Between 1647 and 1663, over 30 years before the Salem witch trials, 37 people were accused of witchcraft in Hartford, Connecticut. 11 were executed. As belief in witchcraft, at least as it was known in the 17th century, carries with it a suspension of belief in scientific reason, it follows that the rules of evidence and methods of investigation would collide with modern methods of investigating and adjudicating the offense. In the case of some witchcraft accusations, trial by ordeal was employed. The idea behind an ordeal was that certain, quote, scientific beliefs, unquote, would be validated about witches, and/or that divine intervention would ensure that justice was served. In some cases, ordeals were used in witch hunts, although these were actually intended more as a physical test of whether the accused would float, rather than an ordeal invoking divine intervention to prove or disprove guilt, i.e., a witch floated because she was supposedly made of wood. In such a case, God intervened and caused her to float, demonstrating her guilt. Another ordeal was the touch test. In the 1662 trial of two English women named Rose Cullender and Amy Denny, children who were suffering from fits were calmed when touched by the accused, proving their guilt. Another type of ordeal was a bodily examination. In the Salem witch trials, accused female witches were examined for, quote, witches' marks that were supposedly caused by a familiar spirit. Another ordeal was reciting the Lord's Prayer. If someone recites the Lord's Prayer, Our Father who art in heaven, etc., they were considered not to be a witch. No one could recite the Lord's Prayer if they were being controlled by the devil.